County Commissioners meeting, September 17th, 2019.
Good morning. It is 9 a.m. on our regular Tuesday morning meeting. We have a full complement of commissioners this morning. We have Johnson, our administrator, and Karen, our clerk. And if you would join me for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. According to the agenda, we have a relatively short meeting today. So our first item on the agenda is Kyle, talk to us about that 1406, please. House Bill? No. Yeah, it is House Bill.
Yeah. Morning.
Morning, Kyle.
Well, I came today to talk to you about a new revenue share program that the state signed a bill in July, allowing local governments, cities and counties, to retain a portion of the local sales tax and apply it towards affordable housing. The states recognize that there's the affordable housing crisis, if you will, is a statewide issue. In Franklin County, UW did a study in 2018, and we had a vacancy rate of between 1% and 2%. So people without barriers, like evictions or a criminal history, have difficulty renting because landlords can be choosy, and it makes it even more difficult for individuals that have barriers. So this program was, like I said, signed. The bill was signed in July. It allows the sales tax credit can be retained in increments of 0.0073, and I'll explain that here in a minute. It's important to understand this isn't a new sales tax. It's just retaining a portion of the tax that is already being paid, and allows, like I said, local governments to use it for constructing, rehabbing affordable housing. Can be used for operations and maintenance of supported housing units, and for Franklin County, because our population is less than 400,000, can be used for rental assistance also. I know that you've probably heard, I know I've had conversations with a couple of you about the 1406 and have probably heard the term qualifying local tax. That applies to cities. It's not an issue that the county has to deal with. There are 4 taxes that are considered qualifying local taxes. Those would be new taxes. And so if a city imposes one of the qualifying local taxes, then they would take they would have control of the county's portion of the sales tax, of the sales tax portion retained. The counties, by signing a letter of intent and later a tax ordinance, qualify for the full tax credit, which is a 0.0146. If the cities within the county also opt to opt into the program, then that 0.0146 would be split. The county would get half the portion, the city would get the other half. If the city chooses not to, the county retains the full portion. It's a 20-year credit, and there's the ability to bond off of future sales tax. The county would have, local jurisdictions have the option of entering into interlocal agreements to pool money, have a larger chunk of money to do bigger things. I have had conversations with the city of Pasco, and I'm going to go meet at the next city council meeting in case they've got questions about the House bill. They right now they're just providing information to this next meeting, providing information to the city. My hope, or what my recommendation would be, if the county chooses to opt into this, would be to treat it similar, like our 2060 fund, where it's governed by a steering committee, where we would enter into interlocal agreements with the cities if they were interested in that. Have a steering committee that directs how the funds are used. Of course, that would be at the discretion of the board. It's important that there are kind of short time windows. The county would have to authorize or sign a resolution of intent. That would have to be turned into the state by January 31st, and then the tax ordinance would have to be adopted by July 27th of 2020. I think that's a rundown. Do any of you have any questions?
Have you talked to Benton County at all yet? Isn't there some opportunity, because you're a bi-county function, to partner with them?
The local jurisdictions, cities, counties, multiple cities, multiple counties could enter into interlocals, and so theoretically, if I'm understanding what you're asking, is yes, if the counties and the cities within the counties all wanted to enter into an interlocal agreement with each other, we could pool all of the money in Benton and Franklin counties and use it towards affordable housing.
I was just curious, because of the fact that your operation is by county, if there was any discussion that way.
Yeah, there would still have to be interlocals signed by the cities and the counties.
Sure.
But yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
Have you had any discussions?
I've had discussions. I presented last week to Benton County, and they signed the resolution of intent. I talked about the ability to enter interlocal agreements. I didn't specifically talk about all of the cities in both counties but they were interested in pooling resources and more money. You can focus on larger programs.
Is it, I guess I didn't realize you needed to bring the cities in. If Benton and Franklin County decided to do it through your office, could that happen?
With the exception, if one of the cities, let's just hypothetically say that Pasco chooses to initiate one of the 4 qualifying local taxes. Again, there's a .0146 total tax credit that comes to the community.
Right.
If they want to opt into the program but they don't want to initiate a qualifying tax, the county and the city would split that 0.1. So each would get a .0073.
Right.
If the city chooses not to do anything, they either choose to not participate, or they don't sign the resolution of intent and the tax ordinance by the specified time frames, the county retains their portion. Okay. If they pass a qualifying local tax, they would get the county's portion. They would have control of the full 1.0146. It's also important that the counties, and I had a conversation specifically with Pasco. I haven't been able to speak with the other cities. I intend to. It's important that if the county's interested in participating, that they act before the cities. My understanding is it was an error in the writing of the bill, and how it's being interpreted is that if the city signs the resolution of intent and authorizes the tax ordinance before the county does, then it would artificially subtract the population of that city from the total county number. There's no impact on the city with the county going first, but the county wouldn't get credit for the city's population if the city goes first. That makes sense. I hope it makes sense. It did in my mind, but that doesn't always mean it makes sense to everyone else.
Kyle, it mentions here as the sales tax that we've been talking about, but it also mentions a use tax. Now, explain that. What's the use tax?
It's just a sales and use tax for that the state collects from each local
The use
jurisdiction.
tax is the same amount as the sales tax. It's just used to collect revenue when it's not a point of sale situation. In the state of Washington, for example, if you go to a yard sale at your neighbor's house and you buy a used credenza for $100, by law you're supposed to fill out a form and submit a use tax, which coincidentally is exactly equal to the sales tax, and send the form and the money to the state of Washington. That's a use tax.
I'm sure that happens for all those yard sales.
Yeah, it's remarkable. If you buy, say, an aircraft out of state, the first place you land in the state of Washington is the first place you used that item, and you're obligated to pay sales tax at the rate of the airport where it was first landed. So people who buy airplanes out of state land in certain locations for obvious reasons, but that's a use tax also. Kyle, you mentioned the qualifying taxes. Could you explain that just a little bit more? Not necessarily what the four of them are, but that is the imposition by the city of an additional tax?
It would be, yeah. The four taxes are geared towards human service related. There's, I think, three of them are housing, or two of them are housing. One of them is a.
So if the city of Pasco were to do that, you mentioned that they would get half of the 1406 tax we're talking about now.
No, they would get if they impose a qualifying local tax, that would be a new tax, but they would get the full share. They would get the county's portion of 1406 money.
So if they impose a new qualifying tax, they're going to get tax revenue from that new tax,
Yes.
correct? And they're going to get the full 1406 portion?
Yes.
Does that in any way seem peculiar to you?
It's the way the bill was written.
Okay. Well, it does to me. I just, if you said no, it makes perfect sense, then I was going to ask some more questions. So with respect to intent, if we were to approve a resolution of intent, is that reversible? Could we, if in January, February, we learned new information, decided, this doesn't make sense after all, are we bound by that?
No, we're not. No, we're not bound by it, and I think that's a good point. I think one of the things that I haven't been able to come across any negatives. That's not to say there aren't any out there.
Well, give me a minute because I'm going there.
Okay, all right. I know. One of the issues that came up is that there's work that's associated with reporting requirements. We don't know what those reporting requirements are yet. Commerce hasn't decided that. So there's a degree of work that is associated with the program, but there's no ability to charge any kind of administration fee or anything like that. So it's just additional work. I think it's important because I think that it's money that can help fill some holes in our community.
So it's okay before we get off on a trail. I'd like to finish my line of reasoning here. We can withdraw so long as we do it before the 27th of July, correct?
Correct.
And for this to actually move forward, we'd have to take an additional action on or before 27 July.
Correct. We'd have to authorize a tax ordinance.
Okay. You mentioned that it's bondable money for 20 years. If
Yes.
we bond off of this money, then obviously we wouldn't be able to withdraw.
Correct.
We'd be tied to those bonds.
Right.
My experience has been that when the state does things like this, with few exceptions, there's usually another shoe that drops, which is a reduction in this case, in housing funds elsewhere, wherein they then have the opportunity to say, we're not giving you those grant funds we have for years. We gave you the opportunity to tax or to keep a portion of this tax. So have you heard anything suggesting that the state is looking to reduce or eliminate other housing-related funds?
I haven't, and I specifically asked that question because that was my concern too. Is you can't rob Peter and pay Paul.
20 years.
Yeah, and so I specifically asked that question, and what I was told, and you can take this for what it's worth at this point, is that there's really no drawback. This was the state recognizing that there are across the state issues with affordable housing in the hope of addressing it. So, like I said, I asked everyone that, because that was my worry. Is I
hate to
don't
be so cynical, but history is a good
I know.
guide.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the responses that I got were, no, it's not going to impact other housing programs moving forward.
Because we do hear on the mental health tax, there's no funds at the state because you have councilmatic authority for a tax and you're not using it, so why would we give you funds?
Sure.
I can hear that coming in the future.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a reasonable
Yeah.
concern.
Okay, so we talked about withdrawal terms, talked about the increments. If we were to enter into any kinds of contracts, whether they were selected by a committee or by this board is sort of a separate issue, but once we did, would you agree that those contracts really need to have funding sunset clauses such that if the state does pull this funding, we aren't sitting there obligated to continue to pay it?
Yes.
Okay, and you'd help us make sure that
Yes.
happens?
Yes.
Okay. Would you advocate for these funds being handled through your office, Human Services? And two, if so, do you have the staffing, or is that an additional cost?
My position is I think that I'm comfortable with running these through my office. We'll make it work because I think it's an important program. It does sting a little bit that there's no admin fees attached to it, and there will be additional work. My only concern is I don't know yet what the reporting requirements are, and for some of our grants, there's that request. There's a lot of work attached with that. So we'll, unless the board feels like the money going through another office would be a better fit, I'm comfortable with it going through my office, and we'll do the work with the personnel we have.
Okay. If we were to partner with Benton County, as we have in the past on other programs, would you foresee these funds being isolated the same way 2160, 2063, those kinds of funds are? It seems like they would have to be because of where the taxes are collected.
Yeah, I think that would be my only concern with these types of we don't, like, for example,
They're county specific.
they are county specific, and so I think I'm comfortable with interlocals and partnering with cities in the county within the cities within the county. I think it becomes a little more complicated.
So let me make a suggestion along those lines. While I'm not opposed to us partnering with Benton County on anything, in this case, I don't think it, at least initially, I don't think it makes sense because if you create that, you create an expectation that it's a pool of funds, one pool, and it's not. It's two pools. And if there were something where we wanted to partner on a facility or a program, we could still do that. We don't lose that by not having a formal joined program.
I would agree with that. We would just have separate contracts.
That's right. We just have
Yes.
separate contracts, and we'd buy into a brick and mortar, or we'd buy into programs or something.
Right.
Not unlike we do with adult drug court, for example. We pay for a certain number of slots based on usage.
Right.
Okay. The 50-50 with the city county, you talked about the sequence in which these were approved. Is there a sequence or a process by which the county ties up 100% of these funds?
If the city chooses not to enter into, sign the resolution of intent, or if they choose not to be a part of the program, the county receives the full tax credit.
It seems to me to fracture this and have multiple functions collecting it increases those admin costs. If we have a committee that identifies programs, and the city is obviously represented on that, that may be a way to keep all the collection in one place. I think logically in the county, given the nature of human services programs. And so when you go and speak with them, they may well ask you what the county's position is. What I just said is my position. It's not necessarily the county's position, but I think that makes sense.
Sure.
I think that's probably it for now. Thanks.
Any further? Anything else, Kyle?
I don't.
With that,
So, Mr. Mr. Chairman, thanks to Mr. Sullivan for a good discussion and for showing up so prepared on a complex subject. With that, I'm happy to move for approval of Resolution 2019-284.
I second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks,
Thanks,
gentlemen.
Kyle.
You bet.
Next item on the agenda is our first of two opportunities for public comment. Anybody would like to speak to the board this morning? Not seeing anybody. We probably have got some bills to pay.
I see a green folder. That's usually what that means. Excuse me. So, Mr. Chairman, this morning we have two financial matters to attend to. The first is fund expenditures. I've moved for approval of fund expenditures as presented in a total amount of $935,509.74. Note that this has been reviewed and signed by the county administrator and two members of the auditor's office.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And second and last, move for approval of salary clearing payroll and emergency management payroll as presented. Total amount $755,359.95. Note that this has been reviewed, signed by two members of the auditor's office.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. With that, take us on to the consent agenda 1 through 6.
Mr. Chairman, just ask for a moment to do a third and final review on these topics. Excuse me. Okay, Mr. Chairman, move for approval of consent agenda as presented with 6 items with discussion.
I second.
Okay. Discussion?
I'm not seeing number 6 in the stack up there. It's just out of sequence. Harley, I meant to give you a call ahead of time and it slipped my mind, but there's just one little detail. It had to do with we're going from language that reference the sheriff's department, if you will, to saying sheriff's deputies.
Which number are you? You
Uh,
said number 6. Are you looking at the number 3? The long-term disability?
well, it may be.
Okay.
It may be. I think. Yeah, you're right. Thanks. So it had to do with that language going from sheriff's department at all, the whole thing, to sheriff's deputies specifically. And I wanted to make sure that was intentional. Obviously, there's clerical and there's the sheriff's department management, and sheriff's deputies specifically was the subcategory.
The sheriff's deputies are the one bargaining unit within the sheriff's department.
Okay.
That have their own long-term disability.
I kind of assumed that was it, but I just wanted to make sure that we weren't inadvertently omitting others in the sheriff's department that we intended to include.
No, that was the oversight in the original contract.
Right. Okay. That was the only thing, Mr. Chairman, I want to follow up on.
Okay. No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Keith, do you have something for us today while we're signing?
Yes, just one item for some discussion, perhaps some guidance. I think you're all aware that the former detox center that used to be operated by Lords is no longer occupied once they changed their business model and are addressing those needs within their hospital. That building is now vacant, and we have been approached by the Veterans Opportunity Center to occupy that space. They are currently in some office space over on 20th Avenue that's owned by Columbia Basin College, and the college is going to be selling that property And so the Veterans Resource Center is looking for new space and have approached the county about the possibility of us making that available to them. They are a nonprofit organization, but the mission is to provide veteran service and kind of do a one-stop shop for veterans in the community to access the resources that would be available to those programs. They're not in a financial situation to really afford rent, but they would pay for the utilities, the landscape maintenance, those kinds of operational costs of maintaining the facility. We do not have a current plan or program to fill that space. It's owned by the county. At least the land is. We do have a detail to work out that we are getting worked out with Benton County that put some bond proceeds in a number of years ago to purchase the physical buildings that are on the land. I think Benton County, at least in principle at this point, has expressed that they're not interested in spending more money on it. They would just quit claim that to Franklin County. But it would be a benefit to veterans in the community to have kind of a one place to get information as well as resources with the vouchers for transportation and food and housing that the veterans programs provide. It would provide them opportunities to find work and job leads and those kinds of things, as well as some training on specific needs that they may have. So from a community standpoint, I think it's a well-intended idea, but I wanted to make sure that the board was aware that we were having those discussions and certainly answer questions that you may have or go back to them with questions about their operations that you may have.
This is just an administration building. There's no housing involved in it.
Correct. Yeah, they would just have program managers. I think that she said that there's, I should know this, but 14 to 20 somewhere in there employees that they have from time to time. Yeah, and the space they're in right now is very crowded, very cramped, and they have looked at this facility and thought it would be adequate for their needs. But yeah, there would not be any housing at that facility.
You have to correct me if I'm wrong, but there's only fire suppression in the 7th Avenue side, isn't there? That back side, is that? I don't know if that could be used for offices.
Lord's was using that for offices. I did take a tour of it, but I don't recall specifically if it was lacking fire suppression.
It'd be a thought.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, that would have to be a consideration.
Keith, do you know when the CBC building is going to?
They need to be out by the end of the year.
Okay. My sense is that it's a worthwhile not-for-profit entity. Obviously, we'd run a legal review, but I suspect we could probably lease it to them for $1 a year in OBC. And if they cover the other costs, that obviously would help. It strikes me as a marginal location. I don't think it's a good location. But I also think that if they're willing to maintain it, at least while they're looking for something better, permanent, long-term, we have somebody maintaining the building, keeping it warm and taken care of, and it gives them a home. And perhaps I'm wrong about its geographic location being poor, but we studied this a fair amount with respect to where veterans are orbiting and how to get to various places. It's kind of off the beaten path.
There's a couple of logistical things that we're kind of exploring, working on, talking to transit about the possibility of adding a bus stop in the area. There is a church right across the street. There is a city park immediately to the north of the building. It's not probably in a
I don't mean to suggest that it's incompatible.
Yeah, no,
It's geographically.
Yeah, it's
out of sight, out of
you got to
mind.
get there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got to get there.
Yeah.
But even if it were, you know, a year-long interim until they found something that worked better, I'd sure want to have some input from Kyle. I guess he's not here, but
Kyle and I met with the executive director a week or so ago, a couple weeks ago.
he's comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Okay. I can support it.
We will bring documentation back to the board.
When Lords was there, was Jennifer responsible for maintaining the building?
Lords did that. Jennifer's maintaining it now while it's
Vacant?
but keeping it secure.
Will she be then
Yeah.
help maintain it while they're in there, or are they going to take responsibility?
They'll take responsibility for that. They'll hire a landscaping crew or whatever they need to do to.
And the executive director of the Veterans is
Joelle.
Joelle?
Yeah.
Joetta?
Joetta. That's right. Thank you.
Joetta Ruppert.
Yes.
Yeah. I got a call from Scott Smiley, was asking about this and hoping that we would go along with it.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that we can get our veterans group to participate and get their information in there too?
Certainly.
It would be a great place
Yeah.
for the veterans to get avenues to those funds that we have
Yeah.
for veterans.
That it's an additional resource for the Veterans Advisory Board to.
I think you mentioned
Connect
that in
with
your comments that they would hand out the vouchers there, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. You bet.
Okay. Thank you. I would just remind also that there is a public meeting tonight at 6:30 at the Robinson Elementary School. The Department of Ecology is going to be, they're the ones actually holding this public meeting, engaging the public on the Pasco landfill cleanup effort. Obviously, they would love to have commissioners in attendance at that meeting if possible.
What grade school did you say?
Robinson, yeah.
Over off of Lewis.
It's on 125 South, I hope I'm going to say this right, Weehee, W-H, or W-E-H-E, Weehee?
It's just about a block south off of Lewis, just east
Yeah.
of Oregon. So Ecology
Yeah.
indicate a desire to have commissioners there?
Yes. I know Jim Pendowski, who is the lead person for the Department of Ecology. He reports, he's the deputy director, I'm not sure his exact title, but he's the one in Olympia that's responsible for this, and he's going to be at the meeting tonight. So it'd be good to have at least a commissioner there if possible. Okay. That's all I have
Think
this one.
about public meetings and quorums.
Yeah,
and
I understand.
listening versus commenting.
Yeah. We seem to be running into that issue on a number of fronts with.
It's not a new issue.
Exactly. I do have a need for an executive session, but if you want to continue with the public comment period first,
Okay.
Commissioner, however you want to approach that.
Yeah, we will open it for the second of two public comments. Anybody like to speak to the board? Seeing none, we will be going into executive session then for,
Yes, I would request an executive session, probably up to 15 minutes under RCW 42.30.110, paragraph 1, subparagraph I, regarding litigation, potential litigation, and ask that the board, the clerk, myself, Sean Sant, prosecuting attorney, and Jen Johnson, the risk manager, be allowed to participate.
you said 15?
I think 15 minutes is adequate.
Okay. We are out of executive session with no decisions made. And, anybody have anything more for the board? Keith? Commissioners? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.